Rachael. Rachael.
Who is that?
I'm going to cut you from your groin to your gullet.
That's not nice. Why would you do that?
Oh, no. It's the motto of my bee farm.
That's a very different motto for a bee farm.
Well, you have to differentiate yourself. So I just learned that word.
So why are you,
Hold on, a bunch of them are... Hold on. Oh.
Oh, no, they're all over me. No, get them off.
Shh, it's okay. Just let them into your mouth. That's all they want.
What, into my mouth?
They just want into your mouth.
No.
You don't want them to want into anywhere else. Trust me.
Oh, God, no.
Just try to breathe, but don't breathe wrong. Yeah, that's breathing wrong. Yeah. That's not good.
This podcast is about why horror scares us. What deep, dark secrets scary cinema shines a light on. The discussions are frank and involve conversations about abuse, trauma, and mental health. There are also spoilers, so keep that in mind too. Now, sharpen your machetes and straight razors, because this is Cutting Deep into Horror.
Hello, my spookies, and welcome back to Cutting Deep into Horror. I am, of course, your host, Henrique Couto, here with my co-host on Cutting Deep, Rachael Redolfi. Rachael, how are you?
I am doing pretty all right.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Now I'm questioning everything.
Very good, very good. Well, no, it's, you doubt everything. It's important.
It is. Especially in this line of work.
Oh, what line is that?
I don't know. I was just trying to make conversation.
Oh, wow. Okay. Wow. Okay. Well, that's a little hurtful, but okay. Well, before we jump in, we're knee deep into spooky season now.
Yeah.
We're over halfway through October, and we'll be talking about the 1992, was it 2 or 3? The 1992 film Candyman, which is one of my favorite supernatural horror movie deals. It's not quite a slasher. It's kind of a slasher movie. It's slasher adjacent.
Yeah.
There's a lot of debate. There's a lot of debate about Candyman in general.
I can see that.
Candyman was kind of the lower string of horror franchises. In the first string, you had Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, Halloween. And then on the second string, you had like Child's Play and Critters and Hellraiser.
Yeah.
They were kind of, and I don't mean to say that there's anything wrong with them. It's just that their later entries went direct to video. Mm-hmm. As opposed to Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, Halloween, where they always managed to stay theatrical. Even though there was a lot of debate about Halloween going the way of home video, direct to video, especially in the late 90s. Mm. There was a lot of money to be made in direct to video back then, so I could see why.
Yeah.
But Candyman is one of those where it has technically 3 sequels if you count the 2021, I think it was, Candyman movie.
Yeah.
Which was a fine kind of sequel. I liked the movie. It was not bad, but I don't remember that much about it, to be honest. But we're going to be talking about Candyman as we talk about all the films here, which is mostly from the standpoint of it being standalone. If I throw in some nerdy stuff about the sequels, that's just food for thought. It's not really, exactly. Yeah. It's not exactly that. But before we get to that, I do want to say we actually have a sponsor here. One of our first partnerships that WeeklySpooky has had in a while. And I just wanted to bring it up since this is a more conversational show. It is literally a conversational show. It's a little easier to bring it up and not just like go into commercial mode. But we've partnered with a coffee company called Savorista Coffee. which you can find at savorista.com, SAVORISTA. And the reason I really dig this place is because, well, number one, they're supporting the show. If you go to savorista.com and choose some coffee and buy it with promo code SPOOKY at checkout, you get 25% off, which is 5% more than their new customers normally get. And you can know that that purchase is going towards supporting Weekly Spooky. But one of the reasons I thought this was a really great partnership was not only do they have a bunch of different flavors, but they're caffeine conscious. And I am somebody who has to be very caffeine conscious because I am super sensitive to caffeine. We talked about it last week when we were talking about Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah.
All the caffeine I was consuming. And they specialize in half calf and decaf gourmet drinks, gourmet coffee grounds and beans. So if you guys get a chance, if you're already a coffee lover, and if you love coffee at night when you really should be watching your caffeine so you can get a full night's sleep, head to savorista.com, use the promo code SPOOKY at checkout, get 25% off, and it helps the show. So I really do appreciate it. So I just wanted to bring that up. I know, Rachel, you're thinking about getting some Savorista.
I am. I was looking at the flavors and they really do look good. Yeah,
Colombian inspiration, barely buzzed half calf dark roast. They've got a bunch. They've got medium roasts and light roasts as well. I like, when I do drink coffee, I like fancy coffee.
Mm-hmm.
Because I drink like 2 cups a year. So why not spend $20 on the bag of beans that's barely going to get used anyway? But yeah, so it seems pretty cool. So the link will also be in the show notes, all the information you could need. But yeah, thank you to Savorista for helping us bring you the spooky.
Yeah.
So who knows? Maybe we'll be drinking it sometime soon. I don't know. I mean, right now it's been all tea, trying to keep my throat alive through 31 days of shows here at Weekly Spooky. We did a novella this week, and next week we have 2 novella-length shows on Monday and Wednesday.
But wait, there's more.
In fact, this will be the first time I mention it so that, people can know. On Monday, I'll be releasing a show I'm very excited about, which is a over 2-hour deep dive into the paranormal investigating couple, the Warrens, whom the Conjuring movie series is based on. I'm going to dive super deep into what they claim happened, which is like the first half of the show, which is all ghost storytelling, and then how there's no evidence for most of what they claimed and how they might have been at worst, they were a little crazy, or at best, they were a little crazy, and at worst, they were like legitimately bad people.
Ooh.
So it's a really interesting show that'll be dropping Monday as the final terrifying and true episode for October. And I've been sitting on that one for almost a month and a half, excitedly wanting to release it, and then realizing that it is 2.5 hours almost of talking. So pretty exhausting show. But yeah, otherwise, spooky season's going all right. Haven't had a chance to go to a haunt yet because all my friends are lame and don't want to do anything ever.
Oh,
that's the
poor Henny.
Going to haunts by yourself is not recommended.
No,
and not for safety. It's just bad for the haunt because they have trouble dealing with small groups.
Yeah,
because they have to reset everything. Because the haunts, if you haven't been to a haunt in a while, they ain't like they used to be. They're big and impressive and full of props and costumes and sound effects and cued things.
Yeah.
So yeah, ideally groups of 4 really keep it moving, but groups of 2 are all right. Just depends on how busy it is.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I'm hoping to get to one this weekend and drag you along.
That's the plan anyway.
Well, it better be, or else. So, but we're going to take a quick break and then we'll talk a little bit more about Candyman. We'll get into Candyman, maybe, or maybe just Candy. Right after this. So I feel like Candyman is a pretty solid Halloween choice. I think it brings the scary very aggressively.
Mm-hmm.
It's a haunting movie. I saw Candyman probably when I was 11 or 12 years old. It was on USA and stuff like that. But when was the first time you saw Candyman?
It was, relatively recently. It was probably only about like 6 or 7 years ago.
Right.
Because you and I had gotten through the big tentpole horror movies, and we were trying to figure out like what kind of horror movies to watch, and it was around Halloween time. And I had mentioned to someone like, I'm trying to think of something to watch, and he said, well, what about Candyman? And I'd never even I somehow had missed it. So when I mentioned to you like, hey, I was thinking about watching Candyman, like you really lit up, and I really enjoyed the first experience with it.
Well, what stood out to you the most?
Well, I think that, like anyone, the biggest thing that stood out to me was definitely Tony Todd himself and his performance and just the gravitas that he brings. But the other thing that really stood out to me and continued to kind of impress me with the second viewing was how gothic the story feels. And the way, like, especially the architecture of Chicago and like all of the different scenery is portrayed. There's kind of like this classic gothic feel to it. But also just the way that they're trying to tell the story of folklore and how folklore is made and built and maintained, I think is very interesting, because it is similar in a way to Nightmare on Elm Street, where belief is what gives power to, either Freddy Krueger or Candyman, depending. But they're both, they both are very different on how they go about preying on that belief. Because Candyman, he draws you into his reality, whereas Freddy Krueger enters your subconscious. So there's kind of that big difference.
Well, there are some other weird things about Candyman as well. One of the big ones, well, first of all, it's worth mentioning a couple of things. This film stars Tony Todd, as we mentioned, who's become horror royalty from being not only Candyman, but then 2 years prior performing as Ben in the Night of the Living Dead 1990 remake directed by Tom Savini, which he was also very, very good in. But Virginia Madsen plays Helen, and this film is very loosely based on a Clive Barker short story called The Forbidden, which was a part of one of his, what were they called? They were called the Books of Blood collections. And the original story was very different in a lot of ways, because some of the things that I find most interesting about Candyman are the way it digs into inner city life, the way it digs into the two worlds, the academics who are generally speaking very well off, very affluent, a bit dismissive, but also with a bit of a savior complex about the lesser people in Cabrini-Green, which is a real neighborhood and one of the most legendarily crime-ridden and abused communities in America. And those are the things that I think make Candyman the most interesting and the most memorable, is that whole thing. Because literally we open with Helen, played by Virginia Madsen, recounting this Candyman legend and then talking about the mirror and how Candyman's legend involves a mirror, and how Cabrini-Green housing was basically built like her fancy ass rich people apartment is literally the same apartment.
Yeah.
It's literally built identical to Cabrini-Green, except this one is full of rich people. And it's on the other side. They use the L train. They reference like using the L train and stuff to kind of stop people from getting out of the projects, basically. And I didn't grow up in anything like Cabrini-Green, but I didn't grow up in housing projects, but I did grow up in basically like a tenement building, which is a similar concept.
Yeah.
It's where you pack people who are very poor. And my point is that that's a wonderful point about mirroring, basically. Like they're a mirror of each other, but they're completely different worlds.
Yeah.
The her fancy building and Cabrini-Green, and you could see Cabrini-Green from her building.
Yeah.
Just barely, and vice versa, I'm sure. So the reason I bring all that up is that in the story, The Forbidden, it takes place in London, and Candyman is a white guy. All of that stuff is because of Bernard Rose, the writer and director. Bernard Rose brought all of those elements. In fact, in The Forbidden, Candyman doesn't have a backstory.
Really?
It's not really about that. It's about the concept of folklore more so. And also, Helen in the story is not investigating urban legends. She's investigating graffiti, which leads you to a similar place, though, of what do all these graffiti referencing Candyman mean.
Yeah.
So I mean, that part I think is very similar, but none of the racial stuff is in the original story at all. Candyman's described as having thin blue lips, yellowy skin, patchwork coat matching his patchwork pants. It's very different.
Yeah.
It's very different. And I'm not saying that it's not good. I don't have an opinion about The Forbidden. I've only read rundowns of the differences between the movie and The Forbidden. I'm sure it's a perfectly good novella or short story. But the things that really make Candyman compelling to me are not in it.
Huh.
And I find that really bizarre and fascinating.
Yeah.
And Candyman, especially because of all of its references to racial inequality and the inequality of the legal system in America, all those things make people have tons of theories and opinions about what Candyman is about and what happens in Candyman. None of that is in the original concept. It just isn't.
So in a way, it was all Bernard Rose, right?
It's pronounced Bernard Rose. Close. You're close, but still offensive and racist somehow. Even though I think he's a white guy, I'm pretty sure he's a white guy. But no, so that's a lot of the stuff that I find most poignant about Candyman. And I'll tell you some more, but only after this. So the basic story of Candyman, as we mentioned, is a woman named Helen, who is a graduate student at the University of Illinois in Chicago, is researching urban legends and becomes aware of Candyman, a spirit who kills anyone that speaks his name 5 times in front of a mirror, which probably reminds a lot of people of Bloody Mary. Mm-hmm. Very similar concept. When I was growing up, I thought Candyman was an actual legend because of the movie. I thought that was an actual thing. Like my sister and I would dare each other to say Candyman 5 times in the mirror, and it's not even real. It was made up by the Forbidden and then used in this film. So she learns that there was a murder at the Cabrini-Green housing project, and that it was attributed by locals to Candyman. So she decides to go down there and investigate, and and she finds it. That's like the long of the short of it is she definitely finds him. So, yeah. And one thing I want to mention is there's a lot of like questioning sanity and stuff like that, but I want to point out that Candyman himself is never seen by anyone other than Helen.
Yeah.
In the entire film, including, and she's the one recounting all of the stories where we see him as well, which leans into a lot of people, including to some degree myself, wondering if there is no Candyman at all. And if it's the delusions of a woman driven insane or something along those lines.
Ooh.
But we can get into that later. But yeah, so Candyman, super, super fun, scary, creepy horror movie. A lot more. It does bring the gore a few times. In fact, when the gore happens, it's very, very shocking.
Yeah.
But overall, I want to say it's psychological, but those gore scenes are really,
they're pretty
intense.
Really
startling,
pretty
and they hit hard when they do.
Yeah.
So But it is available to watch on Amazon Prime. You can rent it. It's available on AMC Plus with a subscription. And maybe on Tubi. I'm checking. Nope, no longer available on Tubi. Thanks, Google. So it's not super available, but if you haven't seen it, that's your own fault. It's been out for a really long time. But with that all being said, you wanna get us started on this journey?
Yeah. Well, it's like you said, the introduction is great because not only does it give us the backstory or kind of like the mythology of Candyman, it's also a really good introduction to Helen. Like you said, she's a student of mythology. And after she recounts the story of Candyman, she's kind of there.
When you say story of Candyman, what do you mean?
The opening scene is her talking about if you say the name 5 times into a mirror, then Candyman will come and he's responsible for violence and murdering people. And then it goes into her interviewing different people who live at Cabrini-Green,
which are the cleaning staff at her college.
That's right. Yeah. And they're kind of expounding upon the effect that Candyman has actually had on their community. Like, he's not just a story to them, he's a reality. And this really piques Helen's interest. And so she and her friend, is it Bernadette?
Mm-hmm.
That's when they hatch their plan to go to Cabrini-Green and investigate. But first, Helen wants to talk to her husband, Lyle, who is a professor or a lecturer at the college.
He's a professor.
And what's interesting about their relationship...
his name is Trevor. His last name is Lyle. Both of their last names are Lyle.
That's where I got Lyle. So their relationship was interesting because as you and I were watching this again the other night, we both commented how even though they're married, they don't interact like they're married. They don't really feel like they're married.
Yeah, he seems to just kind of come and go. It made me think they were more like kind of casually dating.
Yeah, and I have to agree. And this first introduction with him, we get the sense that not everything may be right. Because first off, he's giving this lecture about, urban legends, and she's real upset at the end of the lecture because he had promised that he was going to wait until she was there, fully there to give the lecture. And he had just, kind of gone ahead without her. And then she was also noticing that he's getting a lot of attention from one of his students. And he's just, kind of writing it off as oh, she's just a kid. She's just infatuated with me. But Helen, she already seems kind of suspicious of that.
Well, and it's worth mentioning. I think the reason she was mad that he was diving into urban legends from an academic standpoint is she was worried about him priming the students against her presentation.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's kind of that's a thing. If you follow somebody you respect saying this is all kind of bullcrap, then it kind of destroys the ability to get people to care about what you're writing about. And her interest in the Candyman legend is a little deeper in that her and Bernadette believe that their thesis is Cabrini-Green residents are using the Candyman legend to cope with racial inequality, basically.
Yeah.
That they're using it to cope with the fact that they live in hell by many people's standards. They live in an awful place full of scary people and people get killed all the time, which is very very perfectly academic lensed, that it's we're going to look at this urban legend through the veil of racial inequality. In fact, when they tell the Candyman legend, the legend itself, there's a really odd detail I don't know if you picked up on. When they describe the jock guy and the girl kind of making out on the bed, when the whole thing happens, And I'll explain that right after this. So when she is telling a version of the Candyman myth, not his real quote-unquote backstory, which we get to in a little bit, it doesn't even take place in Chicago. It's in a small suburban house in Indiana.
Oh, you're right. I didn't notice that.
I mean, do you remember that though? I mean, they're nowhere near Cabrini-Green.
Yeah.
I think they're outside of Gary or something. They're in Indiana.
Yeah.
And they're literally, it's like a stereotypical urban legend. The guy is wearing a Letterman jacket and the girl has a ponytail, and maybe tonight's the night she's going to give it up. You know, it's so urban legend coded. It's just completely urban legendy. That has nothing to do with Cabrini-Green. That has nothing to do with any of the elements of Candyman that we come to know later on.
Yeah.
Which I find really, really interesting and kind of strange.
Yeah.
I just thought that was kind of worth mentioning, that it doesn't really seem like it's, to me, it's much more generic than what we find out later.
Mm-hmm.
Much more generic. So, and it's the classic, you know, they're hanging out together and then as a goof, they say Candyman in the mirror 5 times and they get slaughtered, basically. Well, she gets slaughtered and then he discovers her dead body after blood is dripping through the ceiling.
Yeah.
Which is really shoddy workmanship. But maybe that's the real horror of the story.
I would say so.
But I just wanted to mention that too. I mean, that's a very interesting side note that makes me wonder about Candyman in the context of the first film. Because when we start, I mean, and the movie does open with a few elements of Candyman that aren't necessarily directly related to Helen. I mean, we get a little opening monologue thing from Tony Todd and the bees flying kind of over Chicago. But after that, like, she's talking about Candyman, and at first he's just a hook. And as time goes on, he keeps kind of morphing.
Mm-hmm.
We see more and more and more. Now, of course, that's a normal trope, that you don't see all of the killer right away. You get more and more of them as you go. But it does seem strange to me that Helen knows so little about him, so we see so little. And then as she learns more, we see more.
That is a very interesting point.
It makes me wonder if Candyman is in her head.
Yeah.
And maybe that's it. Or something, I don't know, because obviously if you follow the sequels, Candyman is definitely a real thing because he lives beyond Helen.
Yeah.
But in the context of only the film, it really does make me wonder.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think that's worth mentioning. So they truck on down to Cabrini-Green to figure out what's going on. And this is another thing I mentioned when we were watching it that I think is worth pointing out too. While they don't hem and haw like crazy about going to Cabrini-Green, there is trepidation about going, especially because they're 2 women, 2 tiny women. I mean, they're like, you know, very petite women, Helen and Bernadette. Bernadette is a black woman, but obviously it's very clear she's from a very different socioeconomic background than the residents of Cabrini-Green. If anyone in her family came from that background, it was a very long time ago.
Yeah.
She has no sense of awareness of those spaces. So they go there and they're in the well, first of all, the moment they get out of their car, they're accosted by gangbangers, guys wearing gang clothes, asking what you doing, what you here for, what you doing, what you here for, over and over to them, clearly trying to intimidate them. They look like cops.
Yeah. And Bernadette even says, like, oh, I told you we shouldn't have dressed like this. And Helen's like, I just told you to dress professional.
Yeah. No, she said casual.
Casual.
Well, because they're wearing, I mean, they're like corporate casual. They're not in like, well, it's also not, it's like cold out.
Yeah. So they've got to wear their jackets.
So they're wearing like jackets and a nice blouse and pants, you know, like a pantsuit kind of thing. They do. They look like, they look like cops that are not in any way even vaguely undercover. They don't look like they're trying to fool anybody.
Yeah.
But of course, that's going to make people nervous.
Yeah.
That they're walking around, because as it becomes very clear, the further we get into Cabrini-Green, the police don't help them. White people don't help them. whenever they even say a few times, like whenever white people start stomping around here, whenever police start stomping around here, it never helps. It always makes things worse. And when you consider that, depending on your worldview, Cabrini-Green and all housing projects, again, depending on your worldview, were built to help people.
Mm-hmm.
But very few people feel that way about housing projects now, that they help anybody.
Yeah.
And there are some people who believe they were built from the beginning to harm. And then there are some people who believe that they were good intended. They just didn't turn out.
Yeah.
So if you take housing projects at face value, then yeah, this was yet another thing done thinking it would help, and it did not.
Yeah. Yeah.
But as they're walking through the hallway, taking pictures of very creepy graffiti that's referencing the Candyman, saying things like sweets to the sweet, all of that, they encounter a young woman who lives in the housing project. And I find her really fascinating. Her name's Anne-Marie.
Mm-hmm.
And she is very clearly a waitress, I believe.
Yeah, it's pretty clear because she's got the
smock.
Yeah, the smock.
Yeah,
That's
and the name
word.
tag that says Anne-Marie. And she's a single mother raising an infant son named Anthony, or Anthony. I'm not trying to be funny. I don't know if she was supposed to be in the script, if she was supposed to just like have that affectation, or if she literally, because some people do name their kids literally the sound, like Anthony instead of Anthony and stuff. So I don't know if that was intentional or not, or how that was planned. But one thing, what did you notice when she eventually reluctantly invites them into her apartment?
The thing that I noticed is the juxtaposition of the outside, like the hallways and, stairwells and everything of Cabrini-Green, and how they're, the walls are covered in graffiti and there's trash everywhere and, it's broken down and run down. And then the inside of Anne-Marie's apartment is like homey.
It's
and
nice,
beautiful, and like well kept. And it's very obviously like a little safe haven inside the mess of the projects, which I thought was, it's great storytelling, and it's also just great character development for Anne-Marie, because you learn so much about who she is and what she values as a person just from that introduction of going into her apartment and her, holding her baby and talking about life.
Well, and she makes it very clear that her whole world is Anthony.
Oh, yeah. She literally says it, that he's everything to her.
And that's, when we lived in a tenement building, our house was nice. Our space was nice.
Mm-hmm.
It was everywhere else that wasn't so nice, And that's the way it works. You kind of have to take some pride in your home and make it nice. And she's very clearly one of those people who's trying to live her life in the circumstances that she's in. And we find out that she is literally the next door neighbor of the supposed Candyman's most recent victim.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll talk about that more right after this. So Anne-Marie is talking about what she heard, things like that, and she doesn't really have much. She's also been reassured over and over that Helen and Bernadette are not police, and that no one's going to get in trouble, that they're from the university. Yeah. So they're trying to figure out what's going on, and they end up going into that apartment, which is just kind of sitting there and taking pictures. And this is where you get some of the wildest stuff, because they go into the apartment where the murder happened and they pull the mirror off the wall.
Yeah.
And it reveals like a Narnia of hell on the other side.
Because when they reveal the big, the big hole in the wall, they already have an idea of the layout, because again, Helen's apartment, the layout of her apartment complex is exactly the same as this one here is Cabrini-Green. So she's even like, as they're walking through this rundown apartment, she's like, I know, like, if we go here and we remove this, then we'll just be on the mirror side of the other apartment. And she crawls through, and the camera like zooms out, and we realize she's crawling out of a wall, and the wall behind her is a graffiti mural of Candyman's face with his mouth open, and she's crawling out of his mouth, which is creepy enough as it is. But then as she's walking around in this derelict space, she looks and she sees a bunch of candy, and she realizes that the residents have like basically left an offering for Candyman there. So she's, like taking pictures, and Bernadette's kind of panicking.
Well, and I want to mention, by the way, that that's the first time that we see her see that Candyman portrait, or what we believe is a Candyman portrait, and then Candyman looks like that portrait.
Yeah.
I just want to put that out there because I've been thinking a lot about the idea that maybe this is her perception. And she did not see Tony Todd as Candyman before she saw that. I'm almost certain of it. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
That's very,
But yeah, they're getting freaked out because like she's literally walking through this like haunted house, basically.
Yeah.
And yeah, please.
So that's when Anne-Marie like stops them. Because she comes with her dogs, and she's like basically like, what are you guys doing here? Like, why? No one wants to come here. Like, why are you here? Especially, a white lady. And she invites them into their apartment. And that's, when she starts talking about the murder, she really explains how helpless she felt as the neighbor, because she had called 911 and tried to get the police out there, and they just basically ignored her. And what's really interesting is as I was looking it up, that's all actually inspired by a real murder.
Oh yeah, I've heard that before. I don't know the details though.
So her name was Ruth Mae McCoy, and she lived in Chicago in the ABLA homes, which stood for it was a housing project that was basically like 4 different housing projects all mushed together. And very similarly, the mirrors of the bathrooms on like the far ends of the buildings had like 2 feet of space between them. And so in 87, there was a lot of gang violence that was going on, and gangs were using that space to like break into people's homes. So one night, some people broke into Ruth's home, and she called the police as it was happening, as they were like breaking down the mirror. And she told them that people were coming through her bathroom and she was in danger, and they never responded. And her neighbors actually called later that night because they heard all the commotion and they heard her being murdered, and they all reported it. And the police still didn't come out. And it wasn't until the next day a neighbor called again and said, I haven't seen her in 24 hours. Like, you need to get out here. And then the police finally came out. So it was very similar circumstances that a lot of people think had inspired Bernard Rose for some of the details of this part of the movie.
Sure. Well, and it's important to keep in mind, bathrooms are, apartments, they do that. Bathrooms are built next to each other in order to save money and complication on running pipes. Mm-hmm. Because the further you run pipes from a central place, the more risk of freezing there is and other things, but also it's more complicated, more risk of leaks and things like that. So bathrooms are almost always put back to back. Mm-hmm. Apartments are usually done that way. And I've seen video of people who have revealed that their medicine cabinets do connect to the neighboring apartment. Yeah. If you remove the medicine cabinet, which you're not supposed to do.
But it's still there.
Well, sure. It's very creepy though. The idea. So yeah, no, that's really interesting. I had heard a little bit about that years ago, but I had not followed up on it.
Yeah. Well, and this all reminds me, you'll remember the incident that happened 5 years ago when I was living in that apartment, and the guy in the apartment next to me was like insane and was like tearing down the walls.
Yeah.
And I had even told you one night, I was like, man, he's like really going at it. Like he's banging really loud. And it was the wall right like in my bedroom. And the next day the guy got arrested, and I was looking like he'd torn the whole front wall of his apartment down at the AC unit. And I was looking and I was like, yeah, he was literally like taking a hammer and breaking down the adjoining wall to me. He was like, there was just a little bit of plywood there, you know? So, yeah, shit happens.
Yeah, I do not miss apartment living in the least. And as an adult, I only lived in one apartment, and my neighbors were like shitty, but they weren't like scary.
Yeah, they weren't breaking down the walls.
Yeah, well, actually, it's funny because my next door neighbor everybody was afraid of him but me. I don't know if I ever told you that story. Like, he was a hard as nails black man, and he wore all leather. Like, he wore like a leather jacket, leather hat.
Yeah.
I was just like, hey man, I grew up around people like that. I did. Yeah. I just did. I don't find them intimidating. I mean, unless they're really intimidating. And we ended up becoming really good friends. He was from Cleveland, of all places. This was in Jersey, because he noticed my Ohio plate, and that was one of our icebreakers. Because then I said, oh, I'm from Dayton. And he was like, my brother worked at the Wright Pat Air Force Base. And I was like, really? No way. Yeah. So it was like we got along great. His family would come and visit, and I would like play with his nieces and nephews and stuff. It was, but
sweet.
Like he got mad at one of our neighbors for like making noise, and he would like yell through the walls he was going to kill them and stuff. I mean, when he was mad, he was mad. But I never, he was always nice to me. So the end on that. But now after this experience where they're at Cabrini-Green and they get out of there mostly unscathed, they end up going, no, they all do. Helen and Bernadette go to dinner with Helen's husband and Bernadette's boyfriend, or some guy. It seemed like it was her boyfriend.
Yeah.
But they go to dinner with Professor Philip Purcell, a Englishman who happens to be an expert on the Candyman myth because he wrote a dissertation on Candyman. And this is where we find out the story behind Candyman right after this. So as they're having dinner with Professor Philip Purcell, it's a really interesting exchange, because Helen is a little bit moderately like combative with him, because he's like, I want to know what you're working on. And she's like, it's not ready. He's like, that's precisely when you should tell me about it, because that's when I could be of the most help, when it's not done. And he's very amused when he finds out that they're talking about Candyman at Cabrini-Green. And he asks her if she read his paper on him, which she hasn't, which is also kind of interesting, because it sounds like the way he was talking that it's like the only record, like academic record of the Candyman myth. But he goes into this whole myth that Candyman was the son of a slave in the 1800s who ended up being wealthy because his father had made a fortune on patents for shoes. And then I'm sorry, do you want to take over? You're looking at me like you were looking at me just totally blank. I was like, am I making this up?
No, you're doing good.
So he became a painter, and he fell in love with a woman he was painting who was a white woman.
Yeah.
Impregnated her, and then her father basically sent a lynch mob after him, who sawed off his right hand in order to make him, unable to be an artist anymore, and then smeared him with honeycomb stolen from a nearby apiary, which attracted bees, which then stung him to death. His corpse was then burned in a pyre, which was on the site of what inevitably became the Cabrini-Green homes. So that's the story.
Yeah. And it's a very powerful story, just from a narrative standpoint, because because of the racial tension. Just because of the way that Chicago is in the real world. And because of the way that they're setting up the story of the residents of Cabrini-Green and how they've all been kind of relegated to living in this hellhole because of their racial history. And then he talks about, him talking about Candyman's origins as someone who could have, he if he would have fallen in love with this woman and gotten her pregnant, but he was a white guy, like, it really wouldn't have mattered as much.
It might have a little bit.
Yeah, but I don't think it would have been like lynch mob mattered.
Yeah, probably not. I mean, I think it was supposed to be 1870.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, getting any wealthy person's daughter pregnant unexpectedly would probably be a bad move.
Yeah,
but
not recommended.
And this begins this odd connection between Helen and Candyman, where it seems like he's seducing her.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that doesn't start until after she hears the story. That's also when she starts to see him with bees. This is all after this guy had told her. And I've heard theories, some people have said that they think Philip Purcell, the professor's character, made all that up, like for his article, because that does happen to some extent, that you like fill in blanks.
Yeah.
Who knows? Because he's the only source.
Yeah.
He's the only source for the backstory. But to a myth that's clearly spread further than Cabrini-Green by the fact that one of the first tellings of it is not anywhere near Cabrini-Green.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a state over, so I guess it's vaguely close, but
not extremely close, though.
No. So after that, Helen returns to Cabrini-Green and meets this young boy named Jake. And Jake is very like streetwise. I mean,
I like Jake.
He's a little kid, but he's pretty smart.
Yeah.
But of course, the way she gets him to talk is she basically says, like, you don't have to be afraid. And he's like, I'm not afraid of anything. So then he starts helping her out, which could literally get him killed.
Yeah.
But he tells her a story about a developmentally disabled boy who was castrated in this local bathroom near Cabrini-Green a long time ago, supposedly by Candyman.
Yeah. And that piques her interest, so she goes to investigate that site. And she gets a little bit more than she bargained for, because then she does run into some people there as she's in the bathroom.
Well, she runs into Candyman. I mean, he introduces himself as Candyman.
Yeah.
So, and he does indeed have a hook, and he doesn't appear to be afraid to use it. And what happens next, you'll find out after this.
So in the bathroom, Helen gets confronted by this guy who calls himself Candyman. And he, attacks her, but she manages to get away. And then, the very next scene is her at the police office looking at a lineup of guys trying to identify him. And she does. And so the police are able to connect this guy who's calling himself Candyman, and he's like a leader of the gang, one of the gangs there. They're able to connect him to one of the actual crimes, to the developmentally disabled kid who was castrated, and some other, I think like one or two other murders, right?
They didn't connect him to the kid who was castrated. That was in the 1970s.
Oh, I thought, didn't they connect
70s.
him to...
They connect him to the two murders. The two recent murders. Yeah. Yeah, the kid who was castrated, remember, like, the guy who ran out was wearing a friggin' beret. Like, it was like the 60s or 70s.
Oh,
yeah. When that happened. And the guy who's saying he's Candyman was like 23 years old.
Yeah, he was... Yeah.
Yeah. So it's very clear that he's been using the moniker and, to an extent, the MO of Candyman to enforce his street control.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's busted. Now, another point worth mentioning, too, is it took this one white woman getting the shit beat out of her near Cabrini-Green to get this guy taken down. Although they claim that the reason they could never take the guy down because they knew who he was that nobody would testify against him.
Yeah.
And she agrees to testify against him as long as that means that the young boy, what's his name again? Jake doesn't have to.
Yeah.
Because it would potentially ruin Jake's life.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they've got the Candyman. But also, I think that's a really interesting turn of events because that tells you that the fact that they were like, oh, yeah, Candyman is who did it. They weren't saying it was literally a ghost. They were saying there's a guy friggin' named Candyman who will kill you if you don't pay your drug debt or if you get in the way of their business or whatever. Yeah. Nobody ever said he was a mystical being. They said he came through the mirror and killed somebody with a hook, which literally this guy could do.
Yeah.
And had done. So I think that's worth pointing out as well. That really it seems like he was just a garden variety inner city psychopath who happened to have a flourish for the dramatic, I guess.
Yeah.
Who liked folklore, I suppose. So I don't know. That was something that always stuck with me was the whole fake out Candyman thing.
Yeah. No, I think it's a really good fake out because it not only does it as the audience kind of deepen the mystique behind Candyman when we do finally see him because it's coming up soon. But it kind of makes Helen even more determined to figure this out because even though she realizes okay, the community is literally talking about this guy. Why has the story stuck around for so long? How did he keep this going? So she's still very interested in how this Candyman myth has evolved to the point that somebody's willing to take up that moniker.
But there's an element to that that's really strange though, which is it's 1992 and basically there'd been no mention of Candyman for 20 years until recently in Cabrini-Green. Because other than that boy being mutilated, there's been no reference to Candyman. No people have been killed by Candyman. Nothing. So that's worth mentioning too. His legend in Cabrini-Green was not much of anything. He was more a whispered story for campfires and sleepovers and things like that. So and I mean I think she is not as curious until she sees Candyman, until he reveals himself to her, because she had been convinced that Candyman is actually this, horrible reality of the inner city life. And that's, what she's going to turn her report to. And that's when Candyman reveals himself to her in a parking garage.
Yeah. And
he's just standing there in broad daylight. And that's something Candyman does that most horror villains don't do. He's not always, but he's often in the broad daylight. He's just right there to you.
Yeah.
Which in part is because apparently only Helen can see him, which I'm not saying that I 100% believe that this is all in her head, but I think they laid a ton of hints and clues, including the fact that everybody around her believes it's in her head.
Yeah.
And that nobody gets killed by Candyman unless she's around.
Yeah.
The real Candyman, not the
fake
guy.
Candyman.
Yeah. So, but he explains that the reason he's showing himself to her is because she's discredited his legend. And that because of that, he has to shed innocent blood in order to maintain that legend and that presence, which is really interesting because that's very grandiose and very egotistical.
Yeah.
He doesn't come off the way I feel like, and when we're talking in the world of Candyman, we're talking in the world of, slasher movie legends and stuff. I'm not saying anything is possible or impossible, but he doesn't come across as a star-crossed lover who was wronged and needs vengeance. He comes across as a narcissistic being who wants his standing.
Yeah. Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
It's as much as he wants Helen to, be his new lover, it is way more about maintaining the hold that he has in mythology and kind of keeping his like you said, keeping it standing
Yeah.
in everyone's minds.
Well, and I want to mention, whenever he basically hypnotizes her, it's romantic.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, but not subtly. Like, I don't know if you noticed, but they don't just give her like the soft filter lens treatment. They do her makeup nicer.
Yeah.
When they cut to the close-ups of her face looking at him every time.
Yeah.
They do that. Her makeup is like perfectly done. Even if the scene before she was wearing almost no makeup. But I mean, that makes sense because it paints a picture. It gives you a scene, a literal scene and a figurative scene. The scene is a beautiful woman and this man. But this is why I really wonder about the feasibility of there being a Candyman. Helen didn't have any of these moments with Candyman like that until she heard the story.
Yeah.
About the original guy and the fact that they called him Candyman because he was covered in honey as he was stung to death by bees, which is so cruel and brilliant. I mean, like, brilliant storytelling.
Yeah.
Not a brilliant insult. It's honestly kind of lazy, but like the moment it's so weird though. It's like she hears about the hook. She sees a hook. She sees the image in the abandoned apartment. Now she's, seeing silhouettes of a black man that looks like that. And now she hears the story about a love affair with a beautiful white woman. And now she's a part of a love affair with him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what makes me like really wonder if her psyche is breaking or something.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and also the fact that as we get further in, everybody thinks her psyche is breaking.
Yeah.
And as much as, you could say like, well, that's the point. The point is to make her, doubt reality so that she's, it's the scary thing. It's like, yeah, but if everybody was right and she was just crazy, that's a really scary ending.
Yeah. No, it is.
Really scary ending. So, but again, like, I don't know. In the movie, that's one of the best parts is it doesn't tell you.
Yeah.
In any way, straight up what happened, what really happened, which I like.
Yeah.
So, but remember, he said like he has to spill innocent blood. Every time Candyman appears to her, this is the other questionable thing. She blacks out.
Mm-hmm.
And when she wakes up, horrible things have happened. And we'll talk about those right after this.
So Helen comes to, and she is covered in blood. And in her hand, she's holding a knife. And there's blood all over the walls. When she looks down at the floor, she sees something on the floor, and then she realizes it's the head of a dog.
It's in the hallway.
It's in the hallway. And she hears screaming and wailing and crying, and she's obviously very confused and disoriented because she doesn't quite recognize where she is.
And from the audience's perspective, that's clearly Anne-Marie's dog because he pops up early on when she meets Anne-Marie. It's a very big Rottweiler.
Mm-hmm. Pretty easy.
So it's very obvious that that's Anne-Marie's Rottweiler and that the screaming and wailing must be Anne-Marie.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a real horror scene, without a doubt. So she's carrying this knife and the dog has clearly been slaughtered. And Rottweilers, especially in the inner city, especially in that period of time, they were very common protection dogs. Mm-hmm. I feel like, in the modern era, they've been replaced a lot by just pit bulls.
Yeah.
Just everybody has a pit bull. But back then, Rottweilers were like what you got if you didn't want anybody to mess with your stuff.
Yeah.
So as she goes to find Anne-Marie, Anne-Marie is in Anthony's bedroom screaming and wailing, and the crib is just drenched in blood.
Yeah. And Helen kind of like approaches her, and Anne-Marie whips around and just starts screaming like, you killed him, you hurt my baby, where's my baby, what did you do with him? And Anne-Marie kind of like goes to attack Helen, and Helen, still has the knife, so she defends herself and cuts Anne-Marie. And then, the police come and they arrest Helen. And then her husband, kind of he manages to bail her out of jail.
But you left out one of the most horrific scenes in the film. When she's standing in front of the police covered in blood, and they're making her remove her bloody clothes and hand them over for evidence. And she just keeps saying, like, can I please take a shower? And they're just like, now take off your brassiere, and they're making her hand it over. I just think that scene is like really raw.
It is.
And rough. And I mean, like, as a woman, I feel like it would hit harder.
No, that scene is very tough. I think that it was kind of a kindness that they had the officer who was instructing her to like get undressed was a female officer. And it's kind of funny because we saw that actor in something else recently.
Yeah, the actress was in the final episode of Better Call Saul.
But no, it's and Helen the whole time as she's asked, she's kind of like begging, like, can I take a shower? She's also saying like, that's when she even then starts saying like it wasn't me. And of course no one's listening to her.
Well, she's saying she doesn't know what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is true. She was not clearly conscious. So yeah, that was a pretty powerful scene, and it really makes Helen way more vulnerable throughout the rest of the movie. So that's after that, she's been interrogated and everything, is when her husband bails her out of jail, right?
And he did not answer the phone when she called him with her one phone call. It went to the answering machine, which would suggest he wasn't home. So when he shows up, she's like, where were you? And he was like, I was at home fast asleep. The call didn't wake me up. I mean, that could be true. He clearly drinks a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, because there's a scene where we have one of our early like fake out scares earlier in the movie is he like jumps into bed and scares the hell out of her. And literally he's just like, I am wrecked or something, and he just like falls asleep. So he's clearly he'll go out and tie one off. So, I mean, that could be believable.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Possibly.
It seems sus though.
And yeah, especially, along with that female student giving him all that attention. But then when Helen's back home, she's looking at the pictures and photographs and everything that she took while she was at Cabrini-Green.
The ones she thought had been destroyed.
Yeah. And she realizes that in the background of some of the pictures, she can see a figure that looks like Candyman.
Yes.
And she wants to, because Candyman attacks her again then.
Yeah. He shows up after she recognizes him in the images. And again, recognizes him in images after she's already become aware of what he looks like and stuff.
Yeah.
Which I think is just worth pointing out that there is a lot. Because, I mean, she's the main, it's tricky because she's the main character. So everything is from her perspective for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think there's a lot of susness with the whole fact that she observes everything. And the order of a lot of stuff is kind of strange.
Yeah.
She hears these stories about him, and then the next thing is that.
Yeah.
Is what she just heard. And that's the way folklore works. Is the more details you get, there you have it. I mean, one other thought I had about Candyman was that if it isn't just her being insane, then it could be that Candyman is literally just whatever you think he is, because that's how folklore works.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, if you have it in your head that I'm, a black man who was, the son of a freed slave who got murdered, then I'm that now.
Yeah.
Because it's whatever haunts your dreams, whatever makes you scared. And I don't hate that idea. In the Candyman remake sequel from 2021, they kind of leaned into this idea that society creates Candyman like every 30 or 40 years. There's just another one.
Okay.
And it just kind of happens again and again and again because there are so many things about the human experience and about human suffering that are cyclical. They just happen again. Like wrongful people get killed.
Okay, yeah.
It just happens.
Yeah.
And especially because again, it's a very, I mean, it was maybe written as well, but it was directed by Nia DaCosta, and she's a pretty good director by and large. And I think, especially to say that about the inner city is very fair.
Oh, yeah.
So
absolutely.
So, yeah. So now he attacks her. He cuts her neck. She bleeds and passes out. And at that point, Bernadette arrives at Helen's apartment, and we don't see anything other than Helen awakening, and Bernadette has been friggin' murdered. And that's one thing I will say, because I do find this movie to be very cerebral, but it really does not shy away from the really shocking, bloody deaths.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about those more right after this.
So one thing that I really like about the art direction of Candyman and, the visual and special effects is, oddly enough, the murder scenes, because they frame it in such a way, and they have everything set up where it really feels like crime scene photography. And it's especially effective because Helen, Helen's kind of the character that we're seeing everything through her eyes.
Mm-hmm.
She's the main narrator, and she's the person stumbling on these crime scenes or causing the crime scenes. But she's not conscious. She's not aware while the crimes are happening. So we don't see the physical violence. We just see the aftermath of all that violence.
There are only a couple of deaths where we actually see violence as it happens, and a lot of that was cut out of the R-rated version. We did watch, when we rewatched it the other night, we watched the uncut.
Yeah.
Which it's like 8 or 9 seconds more stuff.
Yeah.
Mostly involving the soon-to-come psychiatrist. But yeah, every time she comes out of her blackouts, my first thought is this is so much blood.
Yeah.
It is just an unbelievable amount of blood. And I think that, I don't know if it's that there would be that much blood in real life, or if it's that amount of blood will make you think what the actual person would be thinking, which would be I cannot believe how much blood there is. Because I feel like that would be the reality if you were sitting in a room and somebody had been murdered and cut up. You would be shocked by all the blood.
Yes.
So part of me thinks that that's an artistic way to get the same guttural response out of us as if you were actually in the room, because you would be shocked by the blood. So they're just amping the blood way up. So you go, oh my God, there's so much blood.
Yeah.
But at this point, the police come and they take Helen away, and now she is being committed to a psychiatric hospital, which honestly kind of checks out.
Yeah.
And there's a really awesome scene where she's tied to her bed, and Candyman starts almost hovering above her bed.
Yeah.
And talking to her, doing his usual weird seductive talk that Tony Todd does so well, because his voice is just incredible. And she's thrashing and yelling, he's under the bed, he's here right now, and all this stuff. And then she blacks out again. And when she comes to, she's talking to a doctor, and she finds out that it's been a month.
Yeah.
Which, that is such a scary reveal when time is completely moving along and you have no idea. That's so scary. That's really just so unsettling. I mean, talk about feeling off kilter and confused. It also is there's a sense of violation, your time was taken from you.
Yeah.
That was a month of your life you didn't get. Somebody took it from you. It's insane. And it's because they've been trying to find the right drug cocktail to stabilize her, because she's been, as far as they can tell, just killing everybody. And this scene is another one that's really interesting, because when she sits with the psychiatrist is very direct with her. He tells her, she's like, so you're trying to prove, I killed these people. And he goes, I'm on your side. I'm trying to prove that you're not sane enough to stand trial.
Yeah.
Like he's basically saying, like, I'm trying to, my point is that you don't deserve to be tried for these murders because you don't understand what you did or that you did it.
Mm-hmm.
Which is funny because, you know, that's fair, but it also like doesn't click, you know?
Yeah,
it just is like, all I'm hearing is you think I'm crazy. It's like, yeah, but I'm saying you don't deserve the death penalty is what I'm trying to say. You know, it's like,
yeah, but that doesn't necessarily make me feel
just
better.
like women. I'm trying to keep you from being killed. You think I'm crazy? I'll show you crazy. You know, just like a woman. No, but no. So he shows her a video of that moment when he was hovering over the bed, and it's only her.
Yeah.
There's no one else there. But the doctor even says, like, was he there when that was happening? Like, did you see him? And she is just completely confused. She's like, I don't understand. Because
he was there.
She saw him. Yeah. And he wasn't standing on the other side of the room or something. He was so close she could probably smell him.
Yeah. And
again, though, this is where I start to wonder if he really is in her mind. Because
they got video evidence
of her just thrashing by herself. Now, of course, you'd be like, well, Candyman's only, you know, showing himself to her. Sure, absolutely. But that doesn't bode well for the idea that she might just be insane, that only she can see him, because that's also an insanity thing.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's not that great.
That's not the slam dunk I think you think it is.
No. So she tries to prove her innocence by saying Candyman's name into a mirror in the room.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing, you know, seems to happen. And then all of a sudden, the doctor starts spitting up blood, and Candyman has shoved a hook through him and ripped his guts out, basically.
Yeah.
He then, and this is one of my favorite, just like totally terrifying scenes. And then he just calmly walks over to her and just undoes her restraints. That's it. You know, he's just like, all right, you can go, basically. And she ends up deciding, like, okay. And now, yet again, someone has died, killed by Candyman. Only she saw Candyman. Only she was in the room with the person who died. Now, of course, you can make the argument, well, she was restrained. Where did she get the hook or whatever? For all we know, that's just her perception. And in reality, he had undone her restraints for some reason that made sense. And then she friggin' murdered the shit out of the guy.
Yeah, fair.
I mean, I'm just saying, like, that would be the argument I would make for it to just be in her mind, is that it's just the order of incidents is inaccurate. I mean, if you're imagining an entire other human being doing things, I think you could misremember or misobserve how you got unrestrained.
Yeah.
You know, and the fact that he unrestrains her suggests that was a part of, if it was a delusion, that would be part of the delusion, would be how she got unhooked. So I don't know, like, some part of me really kind of thinks that makes a lot of sense, that he's just in her mind. But that is also what they're trying to push to us as the audience.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is the institution, the doctor, the police, the everything, they all assume just what you're saying, that Helen's just absolutely insane, that she's hallucinating a killer, and she's actually the one that's been committing these murders. So, and that also the very end kind of throws a wrench in that theory, and we'll get to that. We'll get to that later.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's still a very interesting theory.
Well, and there's also, I mean, the white savior element, which is like, how am I hurting? I only came here to help. Like, I don't know how I hurt these people.
Yeah.
You know, that's a little bit of odd subtext too. But now she's escaped the hospital and she's heading home, but home isn't exactly what she remembered. Right after this.
So Helen, having just broken out of the hospital, returns back home, and the walls are different. They're a different color.
Which is a sign of insanity. No.
I mean, it could be.
I'm just now I'm just into gas lamping.
Hey, hey, you. So she walks into their home. The walls are a different color. There's new furniture everywhere. And she is livid, rightfully so. And
why is that?
Because, well, her suspicions.
I think you buried the lead.
I did bury the lead a little too much. So her husband has moved in, the student that was giving him the Gaga eyes, and is dating her now. And Helen, she's got a good point. Like, she was only gone for a month. So that moved pretty fast.
Yeah. In his defense, it appeared there was incontrovertible proof that she'd committed murder. So what, was he expecting her to come home soon? I don't know about all that, man. I do love how Stacy, his new squeeze, is like terrified. Like, the moment she sees her like standing there, she just starts almost crying and screaming and screaming for Trevor. Once she confronts him about that, and he basically says, like, I didn't expect you to ever get out. It didn't look good.
No.
I mean, her best friend was slaughtered in her apartment.
Yeah.
And we don't even know all the details there, because she came to already, like, tied up. Like, was she covered in her blood entirely? Like, who knows? So she ditches out of there and heads to Cabrini-Green to rescue Anthony, because that's something we kind of glossed over. Anthony was not found. His corpse wasn't found.
Mm-hmm.
And they did at one point point out that the blood was just from the dog. All of that blood was from the dog.
Yeah.
At Anne-Marie's place. So, and Candyman had hinted that he had Anthony,
mm-hmm.
the baby. So she finds Candyman in his little lair in Cabrini-Green, and he tells her that if she surrenders to him, he will ensure that Anthony can stay alive, basically.
Yeah.
And, but then to try to sweeten the deal, because Candyman, because bees, he tells Helen, like, not like if she stays with him, he's offering her immortality, because she would get to be with him forever. But then he does one of the big moments of the movie, which is he opens his coat and reveals a rib cage covered in bees coming out from his insides. They start pouring out of his mouth, which I don't know if you're aware of this, but that was real. Tony Todd put the bees in his mouth and got stung a ton.
Wasn't it his agent who told him, like, you need to negotiate a per sting pay?
Well, no, an agent's job would be to negotiate that. Yeah. Now I'm curious, because I didn't see it in the Wikipedia. Candyman stung by bees. Tony Todd was paid $1,000 for each of the 27 bee stings he got during a scene. So, the article then says, I was recently stung 24 times and got paid nothing. So he was stung 27 times. So he got $20,000, and he was wearing a dental dam to prevent the bees from going down his throat.
That's probably good.
Now, I have to say that is an incredible bit of dedication. The bees coming out of his mouth for real, very startling. I've known a lot of weird people over the years, and I've known people who have done bee beards.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I am not one of them because I am allergic to bees.
Very allergic.
But that's the thing to keep in mind, too, is people who do bee beards and stuff, they have zero allergy. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
Because when I ask them, like, how do you not get stung? They're like, oh, you get stung. That's kind of the point, is but you only get stung like 10, 15, 20 times. You don't get stung that bad. You just go home and go, and then you take some ibuprofen and you go to bed.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, that's cool. I would not live. So, but yeah, so he has bees, in his mouth. It's a very effective sequence. Very memorable. Probably one of the most iconic moments of the whole film is the rib cage and the bees in his mouth.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, it's just a nasty one. So then he kisses her with the bees in his mouth. But then he vanishes and takes Anthony with him. And we're pretty much at the end of the film now.
Yeah.
Like, he disappears with the baby, which enrages her because, like, they had a deal. But then she blacks out again. I keep forgetting she blacks out so much. But she awakens to discover a mural of the Candyman with his lover on the wall. And the lover bears a striking resemblance to Helen.
Mm-hmm.
But this is another point I have to make toward the idea that maybe this is all in her head. That mural could have been there before. We don't know. She'd not been in that specific room looking in that direction.
True.
And it doesn't look that much like her.
Yeah, it's just kind of a generic white lady.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, like, she could just see what
she wants to see.
Yeah, which is kind of what I feel like this whole, if we make that argument that it's all in her head, that's kind of the point, is you just see what you want in folklore, and you see what you want in these old stories, and you see what you want in these old characters.
Yeah.
But again, like, I want to make it clear, the reason I'm litigating it so hard is not because I think it is entirely true, but because it's a new concept that I'd never thought of or heard about from Candyman that I'm working through and thinking about a ton. So I hope it's fun and not just people going, God, he's really selling the idea it's all in her head. That's not my point. But I will say that once I started thinking that way, a lot of things made a lot of sense. So he says that, remember, he'll release Anthony if Helen helps him strike fear into Cabrini-Green's residence, keep his whatever. Right. In order to feed his legend, Candyman, he goes back on his agreement and gets Helen to go into the pyre where he has Anthony, to save him.
Yeah.
And this is a really important part too. So when Helen was in his lair, she sees a little something that could be useful, a little something sharp and curved and pointy. And we'll tell you what that is right after this. How's that for a hook? So Helen grabs a hook, because there's like a little collection of hooks, because what else would there be in Candyman's lair? And she heads to the pyre, this giant pile of things, which was pointed out early on when she's walking through Cabrini-Green. There's just this giant pile of like old furniture, shipping pallets and stuff. And apparently that's what they do. They have a pyre every so often, like,
just
for the community.
Burn your junk.
I mean, yeah, I suppose so. So she crawls into the pyre, which is not lit yet, obviously, because she hears the baby crying and knows that Candyman has him. And that is when, I'm struggling with his name. The little boy, Jake, thank you. Jake sees what's going on, but he doesn't see Helen. All he sees is, as she's disappearing into the pyre, he sees the hook that she had taken to bring with her. And when he sees the hook disappearing into the pyre, he whispers, Candyman. Because Jake is a little boy. He really does believe in Candyman. He is a child.
Yeah.
They believe in boogeymen and stuff, So he goes and gets everybody, basically trying to encourage to push the idea, like, burn the pyre, Candyman's in there kind of thing. And Candyman is an affront to these people in one way or another. So Candyman, now inside of the pyre, has decided he's not going to go along with it. He wants Anthony to die. He wants all of both of them to be immolated to help feed his legend.
Yes.
Helen don't like that. At this point, the pyre is being set on fire. She grabs a piece of flaming wood and just stabs him in his weird bee chest. And the flames apparently hurt him quite a bit.
Yeah.
At least when used that way. But here's another thing. Why? Why would he put himself in the pyre if fire is like the one thing that'll hurt him? Unless, the reason it actually hurt him is because she wanted it to hurt him, because
she believed it would.
And this is where we get to the really fascinating conclusion. So as Candyman falls back and basically dies, we see all these people standing around the pyre, including Anne-Marie with Jake. Jake has said, and I don't know if it was true, by the way, but Jake said that he's Anne-Marie's nephew.
Yeah, something like that.
But when he sees Candyman, he's like sleeping in I think he's homeless. I think he's just a homeless kid. He doesn't have anybody, or his parents are a nightmare or something. Because when he says, I'm Anne-Marie's nephew, or she's my aunt, Like, he's sitting in front of her place. She's not there. There's no confirmation. He just kind of says that. So I don't know if he's like literally related to her or if she just kind of looks out for him or what. But I got the vibe when he noticed the hook that he was just like, that his room was that cubby hole because he was homeless. That was something I picked up on this last viewing.
No, definitely. Because he's always wandering around in the halls or outside the building.
Yeah.
He's never shown with an adult.
And that could be because he has a horrible home life too, because that's what a lot of those kids, why they end up just kind of wandering.
Mm-hmm.
So I just thought that was really strange. He's not in his home. He's not in a bedroom. He's just in this little like cubby.
Yeah.
So as the flames are growing and we see Anne-Marie, who is just, she looks insane. You know, her hair is completely crazy.
Well, she's wrecked with grief.
Yeah, she's wrecked with grief. And she's watching as the fire is burning. And the look on her face, that actress really sells it, because it made me like uncomfortable how incredibly like just destroyed she looked. As all this is happening, Helen grabs the baby and starts pushing her way through the flames, her hair catching on fire. And as she pushes out of the pyre, this is one of the most fascinating parts of the movie, and there's no Candyman in it at all. She gets out of there holding the baby. People run to her aid and put her out, but she's already burned very badly and her hair was on fire, which is a fascinating element, because that is a very old folklore concept, the idea that hair is literally flames.
Mm-hmm.
They put her out and she just holds the baby out, and Anne-Marie comes and grabs the kid and, you know, has this moment as this woman is dying. And I'm not trying to make it that way, but like such a white savior moment though. Like she finally did the thing she wanted to do, which was in some way or another save these people from themselves. I meant to mention earlier, but I got sidetracked. When they're first talking about going to Cabrini-Green, it felt like one of those older movies about like going to the Amazon.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it just felt like they were talking about going to another world and how dangerous it could be, and like, oh, but what information we could gain and stuff, which I just think is worth mentioning too. Like such a strange combination.
One of those Mondo movies you like so much.
I love me some Mondo movies. But so now she's died, and as she's died, we reveal a new mural on the wall, and it's of her with the flaming hair and the baby being saved.
Yeah.
Which suggests that she has in some way become a legend in and of herself, but as a martyr rather than a tragic death, I guess, or a wrong, you know, a wrong being righted or something. She's a tragic death. And we then go to her funeral. And the funeral is, you know, all of her academics and her ex-husband. Well, I guess, I mean, ex now because she's dead. They're all, you know, there paying their respects. But then a very like picturesque but extremely unexpected thing happens, which we'll talk about right after this. So as the funeral appeared to be wrapping up, all of the people of Cabrini-Green come in like a gigantic procession.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It's incredible. And there's basically, it's like basically all white people at the initial funeral, and then this procession of people that clearly don't fit in there.
Yeah.
You know, like, I mean, but I think that juxtaposition is important.
Yes.
Because it makes a point that like these folks left where they're air quotes supposed to be to pay their respects to somebody who made a difference in their community, you know, and it's led of course by Anne-Marie holding Anthony, and it's awesome. And it's also, you see her walking with Jake.
Yeah.
And it's awesome. They all just walk in this giant line to one by one pay their respects to Helen, who saved Anthony and possibly, as they understand it, killed Candy. Actually, no. It's not possibly. She killed Candyman.
She did.
The Candyman they were actually afraid of, she got rid of him.
Yeah, because she got rid of the gang leader.
And by saving Anthony, that, to them, cleared her of the wrongdoing of killing the baby.
Yes.
So to them, all she did was help.
Yeah.
And gave her life to save Anthony. Is that
no, that totally makes sense. And it's pretty easy to pick up on them paying their respects because she saved Anthony, but I hadn't quite drawn the connection of that she really did get rid of the real Candyman.
Yeah.
Which is pretty important for all of them. Because again, he was responsible for some very real murders.
Mm-hmm. And people were afraid of him.
Yeah.
Clearly. Because, and this falls into my point that before Helen's around, Candyman technically kills nobody that we're aware of.
Yeah.
Like the little mentally challenged boy in the past, we have no idea what happened there, and anything could have happened. It could have just not even happened. It was a little story Jake had heard from like the whispers of other latchkey kids. So, there's that. Then there's the element of the story with the guy and the girl who aren't even in Chicago. They're not even in Cabrini-Green. They're nowhere near where this story is taking place. They're just out there in the world.
Yeah.
So yeah, like, cause at first I was thinking like, she could have, killed Candyman, but no, by their perspective, she got rid of Candyman entirely. She freed them. And I can't even imagine what would have been going through Anne-Marie's head when she thought that, or when potentially Helen did kill her dog and her baby had disappeared. I mean, who knows what's going on there? I really don't know. So yeah, it's really an incredible sequence. Like, what were you thinking when you first watched it and all of a sudden they just look over and then there's this, because I want to overstate, I need to state it properly. The line is like 200 feet long. It's an incredibly long procession of people 2 by 2 walking up in their black clothes to pay their respects. It's really beautiful shot.
It really is. When the first time I watched it, I was incredibly moved, not just by like how many people were there, but like you said, how out of place they were and how far they would have had to come just to pay their respects.
Yes.
Because that's the whole other side of town, like they said, you got to take the L train. Like, so here's a community of people that were so touched by her self-sacrifice that they were willing to make that tremendous journey all together to say goodbye. That's pretty powerful. Yeah. And it goes to show, like, it was kind of, to me, it was kind of showing those downtrodden communities how close-knit they have to be in order to survive. When all you have to depend on is each other, you really have to depend on each other. And they were kind of demonstrating that in the way that Helen had sacrificed herself, they were willing to put themselves out there too. So I think that was pretty good.
I think that's well put.
And and it was the heartfelt gratitude that the people from Cabrini-Green were expressing was just so totally different from kind of this sterile sort of grief that her husband and all the other academics were displaying. Yeah. Like, they were just kind of giving like accolades of like, she was just some person. It's too bad that
she was brilliant and stuff.
Yeah. But to the people of Cabrini-Green, like, she was an actual hero, and there's a big difference there.
Absolutely. And now we go to the last scene of the film, which helps tie the movie up in a nice horror movie bow, but also could potentially say a lot about maybe my new burgeoning theory. As we are now back in the apartment that was originally Helen's and her husband's, and he's there with Stacy. He's sitting on the toilet, like hiding from his girlfriend, and he is so like monstrously grief-stricken and guilt-ridden. He's miserable, and she's like talking to him through the door. Are you okay? He's like, yeah, I'm fine. He just like wants to be alone, and she's like making dinner and getting a big knife out, and he is just like distraught, trying to like control his misery. And finally, he looks in the mirror and he says Helen's name 4 times, then turns the light off and says her name a 5th time. And she appears at the mirror and then behind him, which, by the way, is always how those mirror legends work, is they appear in the mirror first and then they're behind you.
Yeah.
And she just cuts him from groin to gullet with a hook. She's holding Candyman's hook.
Mm-hmm.
He gets murdered, and then Stacy discovers his bloody body in the bathtub, and she's got the knife. We see that mural of the woman dressed in white with her hair ablaze in Candyman's lair. The music swells, and all I can think as the film ends is maybe she replaced Candyman. Maybe that thing that because one of the ideas I'm playing with the idea of Candyman
Mm-hmm.
is that what if Candyman is kind of like what Freddy Krueger was like in A New Nightmare? There is no Freddy Krueger. There's an ancient, in the case of Nightmare on Elm Street, A New Nightmare, there's an ancient evil that just simply exists. And it takes the forms of things people are afraid of.
Yeah.
But in Nightmare on Elm Street, in The New Nightmare, the whole concept is that gets captured in books and movies and things like that. And that the reason he's killing people for real is because there are no more Freddy movies and there's no outlet for that evil. Well, what if it was kind of like that, but it's about the power of folklore. So there really is no Candyman. Candyman is just this force of the fear and the whispers and the legend and, you know, the hearing something that goes bump in the night and feeling this eerie sense that you know what it was. Because it was the boogeyman, it was Candyman, it was Baba Yaga, it was all these things. Because, you know, Hombre del Saco, La Llorona, there are a million of them. So my thought is that in reality, all the folklore wants is to exist.
Yes.
The identity doesn't matter at all.
Mm-hmm.
And there's another thing that I want to mention that I skipped over toward the end that I think is very weird and interesting to interpret, and we'll get to that right after this. So, at the end, right before the pyre, he starts saying, "It was always you, Helen. It was always you." How do you take that? Because that's what he says. He says, "It was always you, Helen." And it's written on the wall.
He does, yeah.
It was always you.
Always you.
What do you feel like he meant by that?
I don't know, because for such a simple statement, there's so many ways that you could take it. If we were to run with your theory that Helen's just totally insane and Candyman's always, all in her head, that
or possessed by this folkloric concept that I literally just made up.
But yeah, in that case, it could mean that it's always her because it's just been inside her.
Mm-hmm.
If we were to take Candyman as being like an actual real entity, then that could mean that, maybe the spirit of the woman that he fell in love with in the 1800s has come back as Helen, or they're in some way connected.
Yeah, I feel like that's what most people go with because it's a little bit more obvious.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean it's bad.
Yeah.
Because it's more in a romantic context, which there is a ton of romantic context and subtext to Helen and Candyman. So
yes.
I don't want to make it sound like just because it's like, well, that would be the easiest interpretation. That doesn't mean it's wrong.
No, it's just
it makes the most sense.
One of many.
So and I think that's what they were. If there is meant to be multiple layers to this, then they definitely wanted your first thought to be that he's referring to them romantically.
Yes.
Because it's very clear that there's a romantic pull of some sort.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
That's something also, I just think about it. It's always you, Helen. I mean, could it literally be literal? As in, it was always you doing these things.
You were the one killing.
Yeah,
you were the one doing this.
Or that, this whole concept of the folklore staying alive was always with you, Helen. Because I do wonder if she hadn't discovered the Candyman murderer guy, and had just written her paper, would Candyman have ever shown himself to her, because she would have helped to establish the legend.
His lore, yeah.
But instead, she was going to potentially demystify the legend, and Candyman can't have that.
Ooh.
I don't know. Or is there, or is it predetermined? Is it predestination or something? That I don't know. I mean, that's where we're digging really deep to try and find something. But that's kind of my thought.
Yeah.
Is that maybe there is some kind of a folklore being, and all it wants to do is keep existing.
I tend to go toward that theory, just because that seems to be, especially when she initially meets Candyman, that seems to be his whole MO, his whole goal is just he wants to use her to strike fear back into the hearts of the residents of Cabrini-Green so that he can continue existing through their subconscious.
Well, and that's only after she ends the tyranny of the guy who was pretending to be him.
Right.
So, I mean, I'm just saying, so like he's there's a catalyst to why he's doing it too. It's not like he just picked her because she's like chilling, doing stuff.
No, he picked her because she's the one who ended the legacy initially, or ended the fear.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Candyman liked the guy going around killing, people with the hook, because it kept the idea of Candyman alive.
Yeah. And again, like, even if the legend of Candyman like had been under the surface at Cabrini-Green, it is very clearly something that is woven deep into the tapestry of their subconscious. Because again, there's a lot of the graffiti and stuff that we see all across Cabrini-Green. It references Candyman. It references sweets. It references
sweets for the sweet.
Yep. Yeah. So which
is a romantic gesture statement, by the
way.
It
is. Yeah. When they were first investigating, when Helen and Bernadette were first investigating Cabrini-Green, and she crawls through the mural of Candyman, and she finds the offerings to Candyman. Like, again, the residents have kept Candyman alive through these stories and through these gestures, through the different things that they do.
Yeah, no, I would have to agree. And so here's where I get really deep in the woods. So when I was a boy watching this movie, and I don't know, I might have even been 8 or 9 years old when I first saw it on TV. It might have been on HBO or something. I remember watching it with my older sister one time. And when Helen came out of the mirror at the end, my childhood interpretation was that she became Bloody Mary. That was my childhood interpretation, was she became Bloody Mary. Now, obviously, when I watch as an adult, I'm like, well, she didn't. I mean, because you had to say Helen, but she became Bloody Mary. But that's where it gets really interesting, because I love the Bloody Mary mythos, because no one can agree where it came from, and there are so many options.
Yeah.
I mean, there's Elizabeth Bathory, which wasn't even named Mary. there was Mary Queen. I think it was Mary Queen of Scots might have been one of them, because she ordered tons of killings with her armies and stuff. Also had like never been to Scotland. For real, that's a whole other thing. But and then Mary Worth, which is one a lot of people like, because Mary Worth was like burned as a witch. There's a lot of elements there. But what's most interesting, and something that made me curious when I think about Candyman as a piece of folklore, is there are versions of the Bloody Mary myth where you summon her and she kills you or whatever. There are versions where it's just saying Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, and you're dead meat, But there are also versions where the only way that anything bad happens is if you antagonize Mary.
Okay.
So this is something that I mean, I know this stuff not even just from reading books, but from growing up and loving these stupid sleepover stories and stuff like that. So that's what makes me wonder, because with Candyman, it's like he was murdered wrongfully over love. And now when you say his name, he comes through mirror and kills you.
Mm-hmm.
And they do expand in the sequels on like why it's a mirror and stuff, but that's not really important to this specific conversation. Mirrors have always been considered like a spiritual portal.
Yeah.
And almost all Anglo-Saxon conjuring involve mirrors.
Yeah.
Tons of it. In fact, that's something people have mentioned about this, is that in African American cultures, mirrors aren't a conjuring tool generally. They have other things that come from their ties to Africa and Catholicism, and depending on how they got to America in the first place, if they came through the Caribbean versus if they came through wherever.
Okay, yeah.
So that's one to consider. So when you look at Bloody Mary, there's supposedly a more devious way to call upon her that guarantees you a truly horrific death. And I'll tell you about it right after this. So when it comes to Bloody Mary, number one, the name Bloody Mary is pejorative. So you are, to an extent, insulting her by calling her Bloody Mary. So I guess in that way, that could be what's pissing Candyman off, is you're calling him the name that the people who killed him called him. But when you dig deeper into the Bloody Mary myth, one of the most chilling ways to do it was to be alone in a room with a mirror, and instead of saying Bloody Mary, you say, "Mary Worth, I killed your baby," 5 times. That was one of the versions that was going around. You'd say, "Mary Worth, I killed your baby," because the whole thing is that Mary Worth is angry because her baby was taken from her.
Oh.
And supposedly that would guarantee horrible death. Because it should also be mentioned, there are all kinds of party games from the early 1900s where it's like you look in a mirror and you'll see the face of the man you're going to marry and stuff like that.
Yeah,
like there's all kinds of things like that. All
those divination games.
That's the exact term. Yeah, divination games. And meanwhile, we have Candyman, which I kind of answered my own question as I realized, like, I guess Candyman's a pejorative. So that's why he comes when you say Candyman. You're pissing him off. But the Bloody Mary thing, like, I just remember when I first heard, like, Mary Worth, I killed your baby, I was like, holy shit, that sounds like how you get got by a demon. So anyway, those are my basic thoughts about Candyman and stuff like that. And Helen could be, it could all be real, or she could be truly insane and kind of doing the bidding for whatever it is that is Candyman. That could be as well. The story about the couple in Indiana may have never happened. It was clearly my cousin knew a guy at the Burger King whose, ex-wife was best friends with the guy, that kind of thing. So that I don't know. And I just know that I love the picture they painted very efficiently in Candyman, because it's not a super long movie. It's thick with mythos and atmosphere. And I just think it's a really great addition to your Halloween lineup, especially if you haven't watched it in a while, because the visuals are stunning. The performances are truly excellent.
Mm-hmm.
What do you have to say?
Well, it's a beautiful movie. Again, I love how gothic the shots are of the architecture. Even when they're in, this rundown tenement building and everything's crumbling around them, the mural, like the wall with the mural of Candyman with his mouth open and this, big empty room, they filmed it in such a way that it feels like the inside of a cathedral. Yeah. Like it feels like there's a reverence to it despite being run down and decrepit. And the soundtrack is also very gothic. It's got, a lot of organs and stuff going on in it. It's not at all what you would generally expect from a slasher film, which is very refreshing and very nice. It makes Candyman himself feel more classy as a movie villain.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah,
he's just got a lot of class to him, which I really like. Whereas, Freddy Krueger's kind of crass and bold and but it's a very fun dichotomy as far as, movie villains go.
Yeah.
Especially considering because Freddy Krueger and Candyman both deal with the realm of the subconscious.
Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting how they're both so different but so similar. And I really do like the train of thought behind the fact that Candyman exists in our subconscious and that he gains his power from us just believing in him. And again, very similar to Freddy Krueger, but whereas, in Nightmare on Elm Street, they're kind of able to stop believing him and in believing in him and take away the power. In Candyman, she just completely falls head over heels into believing him and gives him all of the power, which I think is very, very interesting.
And Candyman being a seducer is a relatively unusual mentality for a slasher villain or a horror movie villain, aside from like Pinhead.
Yeah.
And even Pinhead, he's a seducer in a very unusual way, because he is saying like you're going to suffer forever and all this shit.
Yeah.
And Candyman is seductive. I mean, without a doubt. I mean, like when he starts talking and she's like looking at him all hypnotized, it could very easily turn into an early 90s Calvin Klein ad.
Yeah.
Obsession by Calvin Klein. So, I think it's really carved its own niche. I want to revisit the Candyman sequel remake from a few years back, because I liked it fine when it came out. I feel like it was missing a lot of that artfulness that really kind of made the first Candyman click, because it was a success at the box office. It cost $8 million, made $26 million at the box office.
Wow.
Very successful. People were crazy about it. It was huge on home video. And Candyman was being spoken of with Freddy and Jason almost immediately. So, yeah, he was very well taken to by horror movie audiences.
That's good. That's good.
So with all that being said, we're going to be wrapping up October next week with one more film for Cutting Deep. And then we'll be back a couple times in November, a couple times in December. But we're going a little extra hard for October, because why not? Everything else I've gone extra hard on. But do you want to tell everybody what next week's movie is?
Yeah, because you and I, we had a plan about how October was going to pan out. And then as we were watching Candyman, I think it was right before we put it on, you turned and you looked to me and you basically said, hey, the plan we had, let's change it. So I think now we're going to be doing The Blair Witch Project.
Yes. A movie that I think it's funny that it's polarizing, because I just find that movie scary.
It is scary.
And I'm really excited because I'm a nerd. I bought the import Australian Blu-ray, I believe it was Australian, that has the fully remastered and director approved version and a fully remastered director approved original cut, which was a little bit longer, the one they showed at film festivals.
Ooh.
So we'll have to decide which one we're going to watch for it. But yeah, so make sure to check out the Blair Witch Project before we come back next Friday to help make sure your spooky season stays spooky. But now I guess all that's left to say is thank you guys so much for joining us on another episode of Cutting Deep into Horror. I hope you enjoyed talking or hearing us talk about Candyman as much as we enjoyed watching it and recounting it to you. If you enjoyed what you heard here, head to WeeklySpooky.com for all your spooky needs. All October long, we're doing a show every day. So there's something to scare you at Weekly Spooky. Just find it on your favorite podcasting app. And if you love what we're doing, head to WeeklySpooky.com/join, where you can support us for as little as $1 a month, or head to Savorista.com and buy yourself some coffee with promo code weekly or spooky. Geez, I am tired. At checkout. Rachel, anything you want to say before we get out of here?
Be careful of the bees.
Candyman.